Welcome to the Freedom to Learn podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Gentles. This season, we're diving into what it means to return education to states, communities, and families. And we're exploring what becomes possible when education is freed from union dominance and federal control. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders recently tweeted that the Arkansas legislature just funded another year of universal education freedom. That means higher test scores, more learning pathways, students reading at and above grade level, the freedom to choose whatever school best fits your kid. Arkansas's Secretary of Education, Jacob Oliva, joins us today to talk about the state's transformative educational policies. We cover the LEARNS Act, implementation of educational freedom accounts, the state's federal waiver application, and how states can reduce bureaucracy, foster innovation, support educators, and expand opportunities for students. Jacob Oliva was appointed Secretary of the Arkansas Department of Education in January 2023. He previously served as a state leader, district superintendent, principal, and teacher in Florida. Secretary Jacob Oliva, welcome to Freedom to Learn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You began your career as an elementary teacher for students with special needs. What inspired you to become an educator?
Well, I think, like most people that go into what I consider to be the greatest profession of all professions, probably can think back at a teacher that had a great impact on them. And I remember even at an early age, watching or having relationships with teachers that made a difference in my life and saying, how cool would it be to grow up and be someone like that can make a difference in other people's lives. But I remember even like all the way back in kindergarten being a student and decades ago, and we still do this today, but having story time in kindergarten. And I remember Miss Hammond, our kindergarten teacher, would put us all on a little carpet and she would sit in a chair and read books to us. And she would hold the book up and read the story upside down so that we could see the pictures. And I remember saying, I need to learn how to read upside down so I can read these stories to my brothers and they can see the pictures. And I think even at an early age, I just really enjoyed kind of sharing or just being that person and maybe trying to inspire others. And even if it started with my brothers and then all the way through middle school, I think about the lessons I learned from my band director. I'll never forget the big saying on the back of the wall, early is on time is late. And on time, when the belt rang, his baton was going up and we were playing music. And to this day, like I hold myself to that same core value. Like, I don't want to be late. We have to be on time. We have to be early. These people help shape who we are, our teachers, and wanting to be like them and having role models and mentors in your life and being able to maybe do that for the next generation students was something that seemed very compelling.
Amazing. As a fellow band geek, I have to ask what instrument you played.
I was a percussionist, so I banged on all the instruments, whether it was a drum set or bells or maracas or piano. I if I can bang it and make noise out of it, I could do it.
Okay, you're way cooler than I am or was. I played the clarinet, but also piano.
Yeah. The drum line, we had, I guess, maybe a different reputation in marching band in high school. But we had fun.
Before we talk about the LEARNS Act and the implementation of educational freedom accounts in Arkansas, tell us about the returning education to the state's waiver application.
We haven't officially submitted our application to the feds. We have to go through a process. So we've put a proposal together on how we're going to reclaim education in Arkansas, and we put it out for public comment. So if you can go on our website and read kind of our theory or model or our action. And once the public comment closes, we got to take comment and feedback into consideration, see if there's going to be any updates or changes. If there's nothing significant, it's kind of technical in nature, we will be in a position probably to formally send that request or waiver to the feds by next month. If we have to do a lot of technical changes because we got some good feedback, we may have to repost it for another round of public comment because we want to get it right. Anytime you're shaping policy at the state level or even at the federal level, if you're not involving stakeholders, teachers, superintendents, parents, school board members, you're going to miss out. So when we were going through this process, we actually put work groups together that made up a big spectrum that says, if we want to kind of unhandcuff ourselves from some of the unnecessary bureaucracy and the red tape that the feds implement on us or require us to participate in, what would we ask for, and what would be a real waiver request? So we feel like in the state of Arkansas, under Governor Sanders' leadership, we've shaped some really good policy on how we're going to improve schools. And we had a big, robust, comprehensive package called Arkansas Learns that touched everything from early learning, K-12, career and technical education, parent empowerment, some higher ed components. And in that, built a whole new kind of accountability system. And our theory is pretty simple. We feel pretty good that our accountability system and how we identify A through S schools and student populations and measure learning in those schools is better than what the feds require through CS&I and TS&I, comprehensive support and targeted support. We don't want to do both models. In fact, a lot of people think when they think waiver that we're asking to do less or not be held accountable or ask for laws to be waived. We're not asking for that. We're actually asking to use our system because it's more accountability, because we're going to identify more students in schools that need targeted support and intervention. What we want is some bureaucracy and red tape of those dollars that we get, like Title I, Title II, Title IV, Title III. If we were able to have flexibility and be able to support districts and schools with writing an improvement plan that works best for their students, can we blend and braid funds in a manner that's common sense? Currently, the way we have to write all of our funds and requests is very siloed. It's very fragmented. It pits people against each other. It creates this culture of, well, I'm the Title IV coordinator. This is my money, and you can't touch it unless I tell you how to spend it. We don't want to get pots of money and say we can't use it to fund initiatives and students. Students don't show up at school in different pots of buckets on identifying what they need. And so when we're looking at putting together a waiver request, it's very simple. We need less bureaucracy. We need less red tape. We need to stifle innovate or support innovation, not stifle it. We actually, through this process, created what we call a common application for state and federal funding. Every one of these pots of money require a common needs assessment, right? And a bunch of data to support why you need this money. Well, this need of students that are struggling to learn check a lot of boxes. Why do I have to write 17 common needs assessment, 17 different plans? Can we simplify this process, make things easy? And I think the biggest thing is if we can have some flexibility and get kind of that block grant mentality from the feds and be able to support districts in that mindset, make applications easier, make bureaucracy and red tape a lot more eliminated, then we can actually direct more dollars to supporting students. The current system right now is so bifurcated and so cumbersome that we as an agency have to hire full-time staff to meet up with federal reporting requirements. School districts have to do the same thing. And so we did an analysis, and we found that roughly about 34 cents of every dollar we receive from the feds we spend on compliance. If we could cut that in half through alleviating some of the ridiculousness and hoops that we got to jump through, think about how much, 34 cents gets reduced down to 15 cents. That's more dollars we can get the districts and teachers to support students in classrooms. So our theory of action is pretty simple. We're not asking to waive laws or lower requirements. We're actually asking to increase requirements, allow us to use our system that's a common sense approach to supporting schools and districts, and take a common sense approach to allocating resources and support to our struggling learners and families.
This makes so much sense. I mean, absolutely common sense. And some of these points that you've made are built into this waiver application. You all write that statutory and regulatory provisions of federal formula grants means that LEAs often face fragmented priorities, inefficient processes, and multiple timelines in the grant process, making it difficult for leaders to plan for and spend funding in a coherent way that best addresses student needs and drives outcomes. So let's stop that, because that's dumb.
We've created this mindset or this culture that Title I money can only be spent on Title I initiatives. And once that pot of money is dried up, or the reserves or the set-asides or all the requirements, then it's done. But improving and supporting students with Title I doesn't kind of blend over to like Title IV maybe, and supporting the overall learning experience of students, or even Title II on how we're going to provide professional development and growth for teachers. Like, some of this doesn't make sense, because at the end of the day, we're trying to invest in teachers. They're the greatest difference, an indicator of improving student outcomes. Investing in leaders. Good teachers will follow a good principal anywhere. Good teachers will leave a bad principal overnight. And then what do the students need? Do they need direct support through intervention, through tutoring, summer programs, extended learning opportunities? This isn't that complicated. We've made it complicated because of auditing, monitoring, and compliance, that people are so worried about the misuse or abuse of funds, that we've made these applications and the distributions of funds so complicated, instead of saying we believe in our professionals and the majority of our professionals are going to do what's right. And instead of micromanaging everything from the input side of things, we want to hold you accountable for your outputs. So if we can give you flexibility on the front end to be as innovative as you need in a school district to support students in your community and working with families, we're going to give it to you. But if we're not reproducing results, that's where we're going to come in with oversight and compliance. For decades, we've been trying to improve student learning and outcomes by micromanaging inputs. It's not working. It's a failed experiment. It's a failed belief. We're failing a generation of students. Let's hold the adults responsible for improving learning through outputs, but give them, they're on the front line every day. They have great ideas. They have great suggestions. Give them the flexibility and freedom they need to support students the way they feel that works best for them.
So you mentioned that you all have consolidated the 17 separate state and federal plans and applications. So that's one way to address this silo thing while you're waiting for this waiver process to make its way through the various levels of bureaucracy. Culturally, though, what are you doing, or what can be done about this identity that these bureaucrats at the state level, at the district level have, that, well, I'm the Title I coordinator, or I manage the Title II funds? Is there a way to break down the silos culturally within the existing structures?
And it's a reality, right? So
huge.
I look at it, anytime you're kind of rolling out initiatives and you're doing this a while, you always have kind of your speedboats, your tugboats, and your barges. So I think, like, when strategy-wise is we look for those speedboat school districts that really want to embrace this vision and mission, and start working with them so that they can be successful, right? Like, when you're writing a common app, it's never going to be perfect the first time when you're trying to look at the data and all the provisions and statutory and federal requirements. So it evolves. So you got to bring these stakeholders in. But once you get the speedboat set up and running, then we target those tugboats. And I've always said, once you have a 2/3 mass, either the rest are going to jump on board and really understand this vision and mission, or they're going to be left behind, which kind of those barges. This next fiscal year will be our 3rd year with a common app, and we've improved it each year. And whether we're looking at district plans or even school improvement plans within a district plan, they're recognizing, like, wow, like, you mean you're telling me that if I fill this out this way, the way you look at state set-asides, the way we look at maintenance of effort, or like some of the things that we can't waive, right? We don't have the federal authority to waive, but how we document and monitor, if we can make it easier, they're seeing the benefit. And when we're saying we don't want to lock you in, that, Title II funds can only be used for professional development. If you need to look at that to support, extracurricular summer, intensive intervention and training, we want to give you that flexibility. And they're coming back saying, wow, like this actually makes sense. And it's a change, right? Like, I know people that have been working in federal programs for 2 or 3 decades, and they're really good at what they know and what they do, and asking them to think about how we want to monitor, what is application monitoring, desktop monitoring, on-site monitoring, what is a complete plan, what is a complete program. It's a shift. If you have an employee that's 100% paid out of federal funds, the amount of paperwork that you have to fill out to prove that they actually worked on federal programs to prove that they did that is so burdensome on these employees. We're putting on a waiver saying we're not doing that anymore. And when they're hearing like, are you saying that we don't have to document and do all this? Nope. If you follow it this way, this is all we're going to monitor and ask and require. It's like you can just see this burden lifted off their shoulders. And that's where that innovation gets sparked. We want to put people over paperwork, right? Like, can we focus on supporting students and family, reducing paperwork, because that's where we're going to make a difference in these children's lives. A student that needs extra support or intervention is not going to graduate from high school because the person that worked in that silo filled out the best paperwork and never had an audit finding. What are we doing with these children to make sure that they graduate from high school ready to be enlisted, enrolled, and employed? And if we can't answer that question, then we got bigger problems.
And you're talking about all the children who are enrolled in all of the options.
That's right. And at the end of the day, these are the students in our state. These are the families that we serve and we support. You know, if our students can't go out into the community and be successful on whatever path or choice they have in life, then we're not doing our job. And my mindset is whatever path works best for that family and that child is the path that we need to support most, whether it's in a homeschool environment, private school, public school, charter school, magnet program, virtual school. There's a pathway for everybody. And when you can empower parents to customize the flexibility and options to make sure that their children's needs are being met to their greatest potential, ultimately that's a win for the state of Arkansas.
Well, that was certainly a driving component, motivator, it seems, for the LEARNS Act, which passed in 2023.
Yeah.
Ambitious legislation, ambitious proposal set out to transform education in the state. Of course, we're going to talk about the EFA, the Education Savings Account program that you all launched around that time. But within the LEARNS Act, I'd love to know, what were you all hoping to accomplish?
So it's a comprehensive roadmap to improving student outcomes. And, you know, ultimately, what are we looking to accomplish? It goes back to our students graduating from high school ready to be enlisted, employed, or enrolled. Are they being successful beyond our system? And it doesn't matter what metric you look at for student performance or outcomes, whether it's NAEP scores, test scores, world and news rankings. Arkansas education is going to rank somewhere between 40 and 50, depending on what metric we're looking at. And that's been for decades. There is no reason we can't be number one. And when we started unpacking why are we getting the outcomes that we're getting when we're making such a great investment into our schools and our classrooms, it became very, very clear that we had a broken system. And I always like to say bad systems beat good people every time. It's not that we didn't have teachers working hard and students excelling and principals, you know, committing to their schools. Our system was misaligned. It was confusing. Nobody knew what to work on. We had standards and teaching expectations that teachers didn't know what they meant, so they didn't know what to teach. An assessment system that didn't measure those standards, that was a predictor of college career readiness, that we didn't give results of those assessments back to schools until they were already halfway through the next school year because everything was lagging. So ultimately, what did we do with LEARNS? We provided clarity and alignment. We have made education and teaching so hard with all these federal mandates, these state mandates. We're flipping to the other end of that spectrum that says, let's make things easy for teachers and free them up to be innovative and work with students. And if we can do that, we're going to improve those outcomes and those metrics, but ultimately students are going to be successful in life. And when I kind of really chunk up like maybe some of those big buckets of LEARNS, it starts with early learning. How do we make sure that early learning providers have the resources and support they need to improve kindergarten readiness? You know, how do we define quality? How do we make sure that every family that wants to participate in early learning environments has an option to do so? Improving third grade reading scores is paramount in every district. Are we hitting a proficient level of reading in third grade? As a state, we're under 35% of our third graders are proficient in reading. If you can't read, it's hard to succeed. School doesn't become fun when you get into higher grades if you're struggling with foundational literacy. So we invested heavily in professional development, high impact tutoring, adding 120 literacy coaches at our most struggling schools to provide direct coaching and support for teachers. We've invested in teachers. We raised teacher salaries. We went from like 45th in the nation in starting teaching salary to top 5 overnight. Every teacher starts in every district at 50,000. In many districts exceed that. We developed teacher merit pay system because we want to recognize those teachers that are going above and beyond. We know that investing in teachers and leaders is a great investment to long-term outcomes. We created additional career and technical education pathways. In fact, we required every high school the following year to have 3 career and technical education pathways that led to a program completion. And one of those pathways have to be off the state's high skill, high demand, high wage list, and every school did that. We've expanded concurrent credit opportunities and accelerated pathways beyond, and then ultimately a big part of it is we empowered families. We believe in choice, and we created a program called Educational Freedom Accounts for families that want to exercise that choice. We've built a belief in that the public schools is probably going to be the primary choice for most students and families, so we want that to be the first and best option. But if they're not able to meet a student's and family needs, those families need other options. And we don't want options just to have options. We want quality options. We want to make sure that if parents are exercising these options, they have confidence that those options are going to produce the same outcomes and expectations that they would in any other pathway.
So those educational freedom accounts, EFAs, that was part of the LEARNS Act. And Arkansas was part of a trend at that time, maybe leading the trend, pairing that expansion of education freedom, school choice, with the increase to teacher salaries, showing that there's an investment across the board for all options and for students and families as well as educators. And I don't know that that gets as much attention anymore, so I'm glad that you mentioned the increase in teacher salaries. Let's talk about the rollout, the implementation of the educational freedom accounts. These EFAs are truly universal, right?
We actually did a scaled up approach. And I was pretty new to the state in 23, and we worked on some pretty big, robust policies. And I was like, okay, I want to meet with the folks in the school choice office. And it's like, well, we don't have one. I was like, wow, we're starting from zero here, right? Like, so we're building out like a whole program with like 0 people.
Right. And you were coming from Florida. I used to lead the school choice office in Florida 20 years ago, and it existed before I got there. So you're talking close to 25 years of having a designated school choice office within the Florida Department of Education. That would be a culture shift for you.
Well, yeah. And you know, there's a lot of work to do because we didn't have any policies written around choice. We didn't have an application. We didn't have a website. We didn't have a way to disseminate information. We truly were like, we're going to build, I think, the greatest program in the nation as fast as we can and get it right. So we knew that was going to take time to scale so that it's universal statewide. It took us about 3 years. So year one, we started a little bit smaller, right? We targeted parents of students that were in an F school if they wanted to apply for an educational freedom account to go maybe to a private school or homeschool or a neighboring school and expand choice programs between districts to districts. We opened up. We actually had a cap as a state and law that limited the number of families that can choose a neighboring school. So like we got rid of these caps and said we want choice to be truly choice and parents to be able to go to the school in the district that works best for them. So we started like schools that were F schools, supporting families with special needs, families that were part of our military and maybe first-time kindergartners. There's a little bit of a qualifier. So it was a little bit smaller in year one, which helped us build the policies and the timeline and the payments. And I would like to tell you it was smooth and we never had any hiccups, but I that would not be true. And
of any program rollout, you got to figure things out. Yeah.
Well, and then like just even training primary schools, because they're like, why would we sign up for this? What are you going to hold us accountable to? We already have a program. How do you inform parents? And you know, we got it going, but we told everybody up front, this is new. We need you to be patient. And I think if you communicate to people like, you know, there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be unintended consequences, it's not going to be perfect. the first year out, we got a lot of good feedback, and we were able to course correct as the year went out, so that year 2 we were able to expand it. So maybe you're at a DRNS school. We included first responders. We included a new cohort of kindergarten and first graders. Participation increased the following year. More private schools joined on because they saw the world didn't come to an end after year 1 for those initial private schools. And then by year 3, we wanted to make it truly universal and empower families. For the 25-26 school year, participation has increased. In fact, we had to work with the legislature because we want to fully fund this program. And they've been very supportive.
So where are you as far as participation numbers at this point?
I want to say overall about 50,000 students, if I had to give you a roundabout number, are participating in our EFA program. And we're a small state, so we have maybe 475,000 students in our public school system, and charter schools are part of our public school system. So around 500,000, maybe a little bit north of that. Total in the state. You talk about Florida K-12, and when I was in Florida K-12, we had 3 million students in K-12. There's 3 million residents in Arkansas, so when you're looking at the scale, it's way different. But the scope is the same. The work is the work, and a lot of people ask me, like, what's the difference from one state to the other state? Teaching kids how to read is teaching kids how to read. The work doesn't change because you're at a smaller state or a bigger state. The scale may change, but the scope stays the same. And so when you're empowering families, when you're working with supporting your neighborhood public schools, it's all about making sure students are being set up for success. We've been on a 3-year journey going in year 4, and when you look at overall teacher satisfaction, we just had a nationwide survey came out. Arkansas teachers were voted number 1 as the most satisfied teachers because we've brought them to the table and said, we're gonna empower you and get rid of this nonsense. And when you do it, they're seeing a difference. We're investing in things that make sense. School districts are embracing it. And I think they appreciate it because they had a seat at the table. In fact, when we passed the Arkansas Learns law, that was the big thing from the legislature because it required us to write 96 rules, promulgating 96 rules at a State Department. That's a lot of work.
That's a lot.
And they were concerned about what that process was. I was like, well, we're gonna be open and transparent. We established work groups, different buckets, and put out a call to anybody that want to be in a work group. Send us your name. We're gonna filter through it and make sure everybody has a seat at the table. Well, that first initial response, we had over 1,000 teachers say, we want to help. Think about that. Overnight, 1,000 teachers. So when we look at this journey in the last 3 years of what we've done to improve standards, write new test item assessments, promulgate 96 rules, thought partners for how do we want to redesign A through F letter grades to have confidence that it measures learning, we've involved over 3,000 educators in the state at some point throughout this process, whether they're at the university level, a district level, a classroom level, retired, going to school, become a teacher. We brought everybody in. And that's why I think we're seeing such great results and rapid results because we're building the right system around the right ideologies, and it's only getting better.
As we wrap up, I tend to ask my guests to tackle the myth that bothers them the most and they want to dispel. So that could be a myth about the LEARNS Act or specifically the educational freedom accounts. What myth do you want to tackle today?
Well, that's a really good question. And, a lot of times when we're in this state agency or this policy and I go around, I meet with teachers and leaders, I even meet with students and civics, I always like to ask people how many branches of government are there, right? Simple things. And everybody can tell you the 3 branches of government. Then I ask, where's the Department of Education? 80% of the people have no idea, right? 80% of the people think that the Department of Education is writing all these laws and all these policies, and they don't understand the legislative process. So I think that's one of the first myths. But our role as an agency, we get viewed, and there's this kind of belief that we're just the compliance police. We're just out there to get you. And I always like to say that's not our role. Is oversight and compliance a part of our function as a state agency? Absolutely. But we want to be thought partners improving learning. And I'm not going to tell you that we know everything. We've got some really talented folks here that blow me away, like with the quality of work that they do. But if you're struggling and failing, there's this belief or this myth in schools that you would never call the Department of Education. You can't admit that you don't know the answer to something because they're going to come and sanction you or take your money away. No, call us. We want to be a true partner. We have to hold people accountable, but we can help you avoid simple mistakes, or maybe partner you with a district or someone that's going through a similar challenge. We're not the enemy, right? And that's kind of this myth or belief that gets spread, whether it's in teacher circles, principal circles, school board member circles. Failure is the enemy. I'm going to hold people to eliminating failure. And if you're willing to commit to eliminating failure, you're not going to have any problems with us as an agency. But if you're here to support systems and not students and to perpetuate failure, then we're going to have a problem. So I would just want people to know, like, there's this myth that state agencies are these awful people that are trying to ruin education. We're not trying to ruin education. In fact, we're investing more resources in education, especially our public schools, than in the history of our public school investments, because we know that when the public schools thrive, they're in the community, and a lot of our communities are the number one employer, and they have so much history and so many families that participate. We need them to be the first and best choice. And we're not the enemy. Choice is not the enemy. Failure is the enemy. Let's work together to come up with some resolutions and opportunities for students and families to eliminate failure.
Amazing. Secretary Oliva, thank you for your commitment to education freedom and common sense education policies. And thank you for joining Freedom to Learn.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Freedom to Learn is a production of the Defense of Freedom Institute. Learn more about our work at dfipolicy.org. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Send feedback, questions, and episode ideas to podcast@dfipolicy.org. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please follow and review Freedom to Learn on your favorite podcast app and share it with a friend.